Next, we would love to welcome to the stage Isabelle Blackwood. Izzy is a senior at Clay Center Community High School. She's involved in theater, tennis, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Youth Leaders in Kansas or YLink, Mathletes, Scholars Bowl, and 2 national prevention boards. She works full-time training service dogs for individuals with disabilities, and in her spare time, she waitresses at a small local cafe. She enjoys reading, riding horses, and traveling. Her greatest passion is suicide prevention, specifically for farmers. Please help me welcome Isabelle.
I'm going to tell you about a little girl. This little girl, had a completely normal life. She had a normal family with 2 married parents and 3 sometimes amazing brothers. She loved riding horses, she loved watching basketball, but most importantly, she loved her family. Everything was normal in her life up until about her 3rd grade year. In the few years before she entered the 3rd grade, things within her home started to change. Her father went away on a lot more business trips than normal. When her father was home, he was tired and acted sick. He never wanted her or her brothers crawling all over him, bothering him. The father, who once loved to take his daughter on horse rides, was now yelling at her for disrupting his peace during the little time he was at home. Things started to change rapidly after those first few business trips. This little girl's parents didn't talk the way they used to. When they did talk, their voices were elevated and their words were harsh. She saw her mother cry a lot more than normal and act almost defeated. All of these things led up to one singular night. One night in December of this little girl's 3rd grade year. On the night, her mother sat her and her brothers down to tell them their parents were getting a divorce. That night was when this little girl's life truly started to change. Less than a year later, this little girl forfeited all contact with her father because, in his words, she was not worth giving up alcohol for. She lost her father to the tragedy that is addiction. As the years started to go by, this little girl got used to life without a father. She learned that she was much more important than alcohol and that her father's issues were not her fault. But as she started to get adjusted to this new normalcy, her world was rocked again. In February of her 7th grade year, she was pulled out of PE class to be told possibly the worst news she would ever hear. Her older brother, her idol, her best friend, the one who taught her how to play basketball, the one who made her laugh, the one who played harmless pranks on her with his friends all the time, had taken his life. The same 23-year-old that lit up every room had taken his own life because his depression was so bad that he couldn't see another way. Not only was this loss so hard because of how close he was to her family, but also because nobody could see it coming. You see, her brother Ian had what's called smiling depression. He smiled more than anybody she knew. He lit up every room. His smile was bigger than anybody's around him, and he could make anyone laugh. It was rare to catch him without a big smile on his face or to not hear his laugh. Nobody could have known how much he was truly struggling. At 13 years old, this little girl had 2 major absences in her life. The year following was filled with so much grief and hopelessness that her own mental health began to feel the impacts. For the first time in a year, she gained hope again when she founded a group called Hope Squad, which led peer-to-peer suicide prevention training for other 8th graders. This was her first glimpse of hope since losing her brother. Soon enough, 8th grade was over, and she was entering high school. As she left for high school, she also left behind Hope Squad. As she entered high school, she found herself in the same position she was in before Hope Squad, hopeless and drained. This was until she passed a flyer advertising for officer positions in a group called YLink, Youth Leaders in Kansas. The flyer advertised this group as being substance abuse prevention and mental health awareness focused, the 2 very things that had taken so much from her life. As she went home after reading the flyer, She pondered on it for the next few days. Was it something she really wanted to do? Could she do it? Would it be too hard for her? Despite her fears, she decided to fill in that officer application online and submit it. Less than a week later, she heard the news that she was awarded the secretary position. Only a couple months passed before she was bumped up to vice president. Since being elected as vice president, this girl has spoken at numerous statewide and national conferences about her prevention work. She has helped host many events centered around mental health awareness and substance abuse prevention, and she has led projects centered around farmers' mental health and veterans' PTSD awareness. She has spoken at her capital and served on state and national boards within the field of prevention. She even won the KPC Young Leader of the Year award at this very conference last year. She has dedicated so much of her life to this cause because of what she went through. Hello everyone, my name is Isabelle Blackwood, and I am that little girl. Since my world was rocked, I have found hope and passion within the works of prevention. My prevention journey really took off at the end of my freshman year when I joined Y-Link, and it only grew from there. But Y-Link is not the only thing that has grown my prevention work. I have been involved in many activities, but the one I want to talk about is FFA. My sophomore year, I was given an opportunity to join an FFA speech contest where I would write and memorize a 6-minute speech on any agriculture-related topic. Well, my passion was mental health. I really wanted to give a speech on mental health, however, my challenge was connecting agriculture and mental health, so I started to do some research. My research astonished me. I found out that farming is one of the leading careers for suicide. This blindsided me. A majority of the men left in my life working careers within the agriculture industry. My brothers, my grandpa, my uncles, my great-grandpa. All of these men in my life are in agriculture industrial jobs. I knew I could not let another man in my life fall to the impacts of mental illness, and that is how I started on my farmer's mental health journey. Nearly 30 farmers a day die by suicide. According to the CDC, more than 1,500 farmers in the Midwest have taken their own lives since 1980. In France, every 2 days, a farmer dies by suicide. Australia loses a farmer to suicide every 4 days. The UK, one every week. In India alone, over 270,000 farmers have ended their lives since 1995. The suicide rate of male farmers is 43.2 per 100,000, while the national average suicide rate for males in the general population is 27.4 per 100,000. Farming is one of the most stressful occupations. Several factors go into that. Farmers depend on their crops to make a living. Many of the controlling factors that go into their livelihood are out of their control, such as the weather. If a natural disaster or severe weather event takes place, farmers could lose everything within a matter of seconds. Not only could crops be affected, but also land and machinery. In 2019 in Nebraska, $1.3 billion in crops was lost to flooding. The average salary for a farmer is $37,000 to $70,000 a year. The average farmer farms 3 crops a year. Losing one of those crops could take away a third or more of a farmer's annual salary. Losing that amount of money when your family depends on it can be detrimental to a farmer's mental health. Levels of farm debt have also increased tremendously, with debt being a leading reason for suicide. Long work hours with no vacation or sick leave leads to great stress and depression. Trade disputes and labor shortages are increasing as well. Household head farmers on average are at least 50 years old. Older people are more likely to have one or more chronic health conditions like heart disease or diabetes. Living with a chronic condition is a risk factor for mental illness like depression, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. It's also been increasingly harder for farmers to get basic health insurance, making these chronic illnesses an extreme hardship. Besides chronic illness, extreme exhaustion and fatigue follows farmers daily. Farming is physically and mentally demanding. With busy seasons and crises, it includes very long hours resulting in fatigue. Fatigue can be related to symptoms of stress and depression, ultimately leading to fatigue-led suicide. Net income in farmers was estimated to be 50% lower in 2018 than it was in 2013. Most farmers rely on farm operating loans to pay off their farm expenses throughout the year. Debt-to-asset ratios are rising, which increases farmers' likelihood of going bankrupt. Farms right now are at an increased risk of insolvency. Commodity prices are falling greatly. Commodity prices are usually unpredictable, which makes it very difficult for farmers to plan ahead. Farmers can never have a set income due to these changing prices. The unpredictability causes great stress on farmers. Farmers' schedules differ from day to day depending on the needs of the farm. If a storm scrambles plans for plowing, a whole farmer's workday can be thrown off. These daily changes make attending appointments hard, especially mental health appointments. Social isolation plays a big part in farmers' lives. Most farms are geographically isolated. In small operations, farmers may only have 1 or 2 employees. This social isolation plays a huge part in poor mental health. Marital stress is also more likely to occur in farming marriages because of the stress of the life and the job. Marital and family stress are common because farmers' finances often spill into family finances. If there's a cash flow issue on the farm, that often affects the family budget. These things are very tolling on mental health in farmers. Many farms have been passed on throughout generations. A family farm that has had the same land in the family for years and years can make farming feel like an obligation. Through obstacles, farmers may feel obligated to maintain the family farm. If the farm were to fail, a farmer may feel like a family failure. The devastation of being a personal and financial failure is very hard on mental health, in turn leading to depression and suicidal ideations. COVID-19 had a huge impact on farmer mental health. With even less social interaction, depression levels grew exponentially. COVID's impact on the economy also greatly impacted farmers' finances. There was lower availability of input and output prices jumped all over the place. There was also less of a demand for fuels due to less travel, which meant less of a demand for corn for fuel. The stress brought on by COVID was terrible for all farmers. Farmers have little access to mental health professionals. The Midwest has one of the highest mental health professional shortages in the world. 4,000 to 6,000 mental health professionals are needed to fill the shortage in the Midwest. In Iowa, there is 1 mental health professional for every 11,151 Iowans. Mental health professionals were more available for rural communities in 1980 than they are now. Besides the mental health professional shortage, farmers are less likely to seek out help because most farmers choose to tough out their challenges on their own. They prioritize their farms over their mental health. To them, stress can be seen as unimportant, but in reality, it impacts mental health tremendously. Farmers are among the most likely to die by suicide according to the CDC. During COVID-19, 67% of farmers surveyed feeling more stressed, 63% felt more anxious, 38% felt more depressed, and 12% felt more suicidal. One study concluded that out of all occupations in males, farming was the 4th highest rate for suicide. Research at the University of Iowa concluded that from 1992 to 2010, farmers had the highest suicide rate of any job. Rate of suicide in farmers is 3.5 times as much as the general population. Without farmers, the world wouldn't have clothes. They wouldn't have food. They wouldn't have fuel. We need farmers. We need happy and healthy farmers. Farmers' mental health needs to be taken more seriously and be more of a concern. Check on your local farmers. Hope and change is possible. To create change, it will take all of us. After losing Ian, I knew I had to be a part of this change. Hope is what brought me here today. From the lowest of lows, it brought me up. It saved me. I hope today I inspire you to advocate for your farmers and save countless lives. Advocating can change someone's entire life. Our Heartland's harvesters need hope. The change starts here with you. Thank you all for coming today.